So, have you ever really thought about what makes a business big? Is it how many people they have on the payroll, or maybe how much cash they bring in? Today, we are going to tackle that exact puzzle. How do you actually measure the size of a business? Turns out, the answer isn't as straightforward as you might think.
All right, let's just dive right into this sizing puzzle with a really great example. Because when you try to pin down the biggest company, you'll find the answer can change completely depending on how you look at it.
So let me ask you directly. Picture 4 different supermarkets. We'll call them W, X, Y, and Z. Without seeing any of the data, which one do you think is the biggest? Just get an answer in your head. Got it? Okay.
Now, take a look at this. This is where it gets interesting. If you're going by the number of employees, well, Business C is the hands-down winner with 1,500 people. But wait, if you look at revenue, Business X blows everyone else away with 1.2 times billion pounds. And then, if you're thinking about sheer physical space, Business Y has the most selling area. So, who's the biggest? See the problem here?
And that leads us to the most important point of all. There is no single correct method. The biggest business is kind of like a moving target. The best yardstick to use really depends on what you're trying to figure out.
So what are these yardsticks? Let's break down the main tools we have in our toolkit to solve this puzzle. We're going to go through the 5 most common ways to measure a company's scale. And this is the important part, when you should use each one.
So here's our toolkit. First, we've got the number of employees and sales revenue. Those are pretty easy to get your head around. Then you have something called capital employed, which is basically all the long-term money tied up in the business. For companies on the stock market, you can use market cap. That's just the total value of all their shares. And finally, there's market share, which is just their slice of the industry's pie. Each one tells a totally different story.
But, and this is a big but, none of these tools are perfect. I mean, counting employees is pretty misleading for a super automated factory that's pumping out tons of stuff with only a handful of people. Revenue gets tricky when you're comparing a jeweler selling one expensive diamond to a cleaning service with thousands of small jobs. And the capital needed for an optician with all that pricey equipment is worlds apart from a hairdresser. You see, context is absolutely everything.
Okay, now we need to talk about the number one mistake people make when they think about business size. It's such a common trap, and it comes from confusing 2 very, very different questions you can ask about a company.
This is the absolute key, right here. Profit does not tell you how big a company is. It tells you how well it's doing. Think about it. A small but super profitable local shop isn't bigger than a giant corporation that's barely breaking even. Size and performance, they're just 2 different things.
So here's how to keep it straight. On one side, you have the measures of scale. How big is the whole operation? On the other, you have the measures of success. How well is that operation actually performing? Don't fall into the trap of using a performance number to try and measure size. So why do we even care about measuring businesses correctly? Why does all this matter? Well, because when we use the right tools, we start to see something incredible. The absolutely massive and often hidden impact that small businesses have on our entire world. Just let that number sink in for a second. Up to 90%. We hear all the time about these huge global corporations, but the reality is the vast majority of employers on this planet are small businesses. The collective scale is just enormous. And they are true engines for creating jobs. I mean, especially in developing economies, small businesses are where most of the new employment comes from. They're literally building economies and creating opportunities from the ground up. And we got to remember, every single giant starts small. This garage, this is where Hewlett-Packard began. So many of today's corporate titans started out as just a small business with a big idea. That potential is what makes the small business world so incredibly important.
Of course, being small isn't all easy. There are definitely trade-offs. The upsides are huge. You can be super nimble, adapt on the fly, and give that personal touch. But the downsides are real too. Getting a loan can be a nightmare, the owner often has the weight of the world on their shoulders, and you're way more vulnerable when the market takes a big swing.
But beyond just hiring people, small businesses are the secret backbone of entire industries. Just think about Formula One. A giant like Mercedes relies on tiny specialized companies to build things like their critical wiring systems. Small businesses are where so much innovation comes from. They keep the big guys honest with competition, and they serve all those niche markets the giants might not even bother with.
Okay, so what if a small business has big dreams? It wants to get bigger. How does it actually do that? Well, there are really 2 main paths a company can take to scale up. Let's break them down.
A business can grow organically, from the inside out. Think of your favorite local coffee shop opening a second location. It's a slower, steadier path, for sure. The other option is external growth, teaming up with another business. This is way faster, but it also comes with the massive headache of trying to merge two different companies with two different cultures and two different ways of doing things.
All right, time to put what we've learned to the test. We've gone over everything from measurement methods to growth strategies, so let's see how it all works with a couple of quick questions. Ready? Okay, question 1. You've got a high-tech car factory and a big law firm. They both have the exact same revenue. Now, which of these metrics is going to give you the best picture of how they compare in size? Think back to those limitations we talked about.
If you said B, number of employees, you got it. That's the metric that's really going to show you the fundamental difference between them. One is capital intensive, all about machines, and the other is labor intensive, all about people. Revenue alone just doesn't tell you that story.
All right, last one. One coffee chain buys another coffee chain. Think about those two paths to growth we just talked about. What's the right name for this kind of move?
And the answer is B. It's an external horizontal merger. Why? Well, it's external because they're buying another company, not just building a new store. And it's horizontal because they're in the same business, at the same stage. They both sell coffee directly to people like you and me.
So we're going to leave you with this final thought. The next time you see a headline about the largest company in the world or the biggest deal of the year, the very first question that should pop into your head is, largest by what measure? Because asking that one simple question will completely change the way you understand the business world.